Reddit, what is a weird, creepy thing that has happened to you that you know will never be explained? I'll start. My family grew up in a nice little neighborhood down near a river, an elementary school, and a gravel pit. Consequently, I know almost everyone in that neighborhood and made a lot of friends there growing up. My favorite place to take my lap, who is still kicking it at 13, for walks was the gravel pit. One day, when I was about 18, I asked my friend who lived down the road if she wanted to come for a walk to the gravel pit with us. She said no, and I went on my merry way. So I've been in the gravel wandering around for a while. I had probably smoked a joint and I was having a good old time with my dog. The gravel pit by my house has about 4 different pits and has varying levels of height on the second level. It is almost impossible to see from one side to the other because of this, and a few mountains of trees and gravel in random places. Also, all around the perimeter is forest, and in some parts you can get to trails that will take you to the school or down to the river. It's all pretty connected. Anyway, I'm walking and hear my friend calling my name. I stop, look around, and wait for her to catch up. It was weird because she sounded like she was coming from the other side of an embankment into the forest where I knew there were no trails. After a couple minutes I yelled, "Hurry the fuck up!" and kept on walking. I didn't hear anything from her for a bit, so I assumed I was hearing things or she turned around. About 10 minutes later I walked down a road to the bottom layer of the gravel pit. I really wish I could properly describe my gravel pit. Just keep in mind, while I'm walking, I've got bush and high walls of gravel separating me from the forest and stuff. As I start walking, I hear someone possibly calling my name. I can't really remember what exactly they yelled to get my attention. I look where the noise is from and up, and about 200 meters ahead of me, on the top of a very high embankment, is a fucking person. All I could see was the head because the trees were pretty thick, and they were really far away. They stepped out and I could see the body a tiny bit, and I could see that it was most likely a guy and he was pretty tall compared to the trees. My first thought was it was my dad, because I asked him to come that day too. I also knew I wasn't crazy at this point, because my dog had noticed the movement and started barking and running toward the cliff, although he would never have got them in time. So I yelled out, "Who is that?" I mean, obviously this person knew me, they had been yelling my name. "Spartacus." Yeah, for real, that's what I thought I heard, although I highly doubt that's what they said. So at this point I'm sure it's my dad, because he's retarded enough to yell something stupid like that. So I yelled back, "What the fuck are you doing here?" Then whoever the hell it was stepped backwards and melted into the trees. All of a sudden I was like, holy fuck, and started walking as fast as I could back home. I realized that was totally not normal shit someone would do. In order to have gotten to where they were, they had to have been walking beside me the entire time, stalking me through the bush, and then somehow managed to get through the bushes to the top of a cliff which was as far away from me as possible. Why the fuck would anyone I knew would do that? Of course, as I got closer to home, I thought maybe one of the neighborhood kids or my friends thought it would be funny to do that, but still, I honestly don't even know how they got to where they were when they were first yelling my name without me noticing, because of the way the pit is shaped. They would have to be running very fast through the bush. So I get home, first person I call is my dad. He's at home and says he wasn't there. I hang up before I tell him why I asked. I start calling all the people I knew in the neighborhood. No way they would get home before me. They were all there or accounted for. I realized this was no person I really even was friends with. I actually considered for a while that I had seen a ghost or a vision, and on my way back home I thought maybe my dad had died or something. It's weird, but my brain was working in overtime to try and make sense of what the hell just happened. I do have suspicions about an autistic boy down my street. He's a few years younger than me and has had a huge crush on me, and I knew he hung out around there sometimes. It still bothers me that I will never ever find out who the hell that was. The way the floating white head appeared out of nowhere on the top of that cliff, and then the way it melted and disappeared back in the trees, still keeps me out when I picture it. It's definitely something that will always go unanswered, and even though I know it was obviously someone that knew me, it still creeps me out to this day. If that person wasn't being creepy and stalking me and was playing a joke or something, they would have come down to see me or would have mentioned it by now, right? Sometimes I still wonder if whoever that was is stalking me when I go out there, seeing as how I never noticed the one time, what would stop them from doing it over and over? Ugh. TLDR. Someone who was calling my name stalked me in the bushes, forest surrounding the gravel pit I was walking my dog in. Later I saw them appear as a floating head on a cliff very far away and high up. Then they disappeared, never to be seen or heard from again. I still don't know who it was. I was walking in flip-flops when I stopped to sneeze. Then the flip-flops were behind me, facing forward, neatly arranged. It was like I stepped out of them, took a moment to put them together with my foot, then stepped over them to leave them behind me, during a sneeze. I have no idea how that happened. I didn't even move. I stopped walking to sneeze. Freaky story. OP. I was at my brother's house with my then 2-year-old daughter. We were there alone. It was night, maybe about 7 in the fall of winter. I was just there to do laundry. The laundry room was downstairs in the den. The stairs were not particularly steep, maybe 5 steps, a landing, then another 5 steps around the corner. My daughter kept trying to climb the steps and I kept pulling her back. At one point, after transferring clothes from washer to dryer, I go back to the family room in the den, where I had left my daughter. She wasn't there. I figure she must have snuck behind me and up the stairs, so I head up to look for her. Upstairs is dark except for the kitchen. Can't find her, not in the living room, not in the dining room, not in the bedroom. I go back downstairs, still can't find her. I rush back upstairs, starting to freak out. I'm standing in the living room, facing the hallway that runs perpendicular. His bedroom on one end to my left and the other end emptying into the kitchen. I suddenly see movement coming from his bedroom. A shadow comes drifting out, starting small, then rising up to the ceiling as it moved toward the kitchen. Thing was, though, the shadow was opaque, almost more like a velvety black. I lose my senses for a moment and run back downstairs. Then freak out more that I'm sure my daughter is up there and I've just left her there. I run back up and as I'm looking straight into the living room, she emerges from the opposite corner, almost materializing from the shadows. She is holding an unwrapped candy cane and laughing. I could not recreate the effect of the shadow, though I messed with the light source a lot. I also don't know where the candy cane came from. It was not close to Christmas and there were no decorations up or left out. Once as a kid I was hiking through the woods with a buddy of mine and we stumbled across dinosaur footprints like a T-Rex. I know, this sounds completely fucked up, but I swear to it, they were huge. I mean, we each stood easily inside one of them. We followed them until they slowly disappeared further into the woods. They gradually faded away as if the T-Rex got lighter as he walked. I know, crazy. I don't honestly think it was some lost time warp dinosaur, but still, unreal. Not sure how they got there. When I was 5 or so, I was playing hide and seek with my older brother and sister. My brother was it. Well, they refused going near our walk-in closet, let alone hide in it, so I decided to hide in there. The closet was about 4 feet deep and 2 feet wide, and the floor was covered in clothes. We were messy, with a bar at the back full of cords. I wade through and sit in front of the cords, then start to scoot back so the cords hide me, but I bump into someone's knee. I assume it's my sister and shush her. I hear my brother calling out funny things to try and get me to laugh. A giggle pops out of my mouth and the head touches my shoulder. Then I hear my brother yell out, "Come out, I got Beth." I didn't believe him, she was touching my shoulder still, until she yelled, "Yeah, he caught me, you can come out now." I freeze, and the hand tightens on my shoulder and I can feel breathing on my neck. I bolt out of there and start bawling, and tell them someone was in the closet with me. We all go to the closet, turn on the light, push back the cords, and we see an imprint of where someone was sitting in the clothes. We all stare at it for a second, then book it to the living room and don't play hide and seek inside again. One time in 4th grade, I had one of those nasty end-of-winter colds. I was in art class and had the sneezels and sniffles. Whilst shuffling through a nice pile of charcoal, I let out a big one. Achoo! I came to from the sneeze and noticed my friend jump way back as though someone had just tried to jab a knife at her. "What the hell?" she yelled at me. I had no idea what was going on. "That's disgusting!" Knowing I had always made kind of wet sneezes, I sheepishly apologized and went back to sorting through some other art supplies. Another tickle kept up my nose. "Achoo!" I sneezed again. Only this time I managed to keep my eyes squinted barely, just barely open enough to see what had made my friend jump in disgusted terror before. When I sneezed, my snot literally launched 6 feet out of my nose and right back into my sinuses in the time I let out my monstrous sneeze. It was disgusting. And cool. I have no idea how it's possible and that I didn't feel or notice it, but it was probably one of the nastiest or neatest weird things that ever happened in my life. Maybe I just had an overly powerful imagination, but when I was about 10 years old, I could fly. No, I'm not fucking batshit crazy. I fucking flew. I jumped up and slowly sank and kicked the air below me to jump higher. It was a really weird feeling and it took some getting used to, but on good days I could get really high. The higher I went, the easier it was. The thing is, I remember clear as day what the tops of all the houses in the neighborhood look like. I know there's a really large nest in a really large tree and some other details that I would not be able to determine unless I was really high up. Now I'm 21 and I climbed that fucking tree. I got to the highest point I could and everything I was looking down on looked familiar. It gave me goosebumps. I know I had been there before. I wouldn't say I was physically flying, but it was definitely an out-of-body experience. This shit was happening. Maybe I was sitting on the grass in a trance, but I was fucking flying. The most surreal shit that has ever happened to me. I still have dreams about it, and these dreams are amazing. I was sewing some pillows for a friend one night and I started feeling this burning sensation on the skin of my left arm near my shoulder. I grabbed my arm and looked up, and to the left of me was a giant swirling mass that was a dark gray color. It was hovering about 3 feet from the floor and kept swirling for about 10 seconds and then disappeared. I have no idea what it was and it still creeps me out to this day. Backstory. My dad developed heart problems that forced him into an early retirement. He was a lifelong smoker, but he quit as soon as he was diagnosed with his heart condition. About a year after the diagnosis, he passed away from a heart attack. I was away at college at the time, and I went home to stay in my old house with my mom and family the night he passed away. I stayed in my old room from high school, which had been completely cleared out since I had moved out. I went to bed that night in that empty room, with only a mattress on the floor and nothing else. The next morning I woke up to find an unopened pack of cigarettes lying on the floor in the middle of the room. I don't smoke. No one in my family smokes. Everyone in my family swears he quit. No one saw him smoke after the initial diagnosis. But even if he was secretly still smoking, that doesn't explain how the box of cigs ended up on my empty bedroom floor when nothing was there the night before. Once my clock and wristwatch stopped at exactly the same time, around 4 a.m. or something. When I complained to my mother about the creepiness of the timekeeping technology in our house, she laughed it off, but later came back to me. She had her wristwatch in hand. It had stopped at roughly the same time as well. Creepy. When I was in the 7th grade or so, I was staying at my friend's house one night. The previous owner had died in the house, and we had always sworn that the place was haunted. For some reason that night we both woke up at 5 a.m., got out of bed without saying anything to each other, and walked out into his kitchen. Still not saying anything to each other, he went to the bathroom, and while I was standing there by myself, I saw a glowing doorway and felt compelled to walk through it. When I did, I just walked into the wall where there was no door, and feeling stupid, I shrugged it off and said nothing. When my friend came out of the bathroom, he also walked into the same spot on the wall. I asked him what happened, and he explained that he saw a glowing doorway there. Be sure to subscribe to our channel in order not to miss out on our new super interesting discussions. In the meantime, we invite you to watch our other videos.